before this episode starts, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's joined us along this journey, right back from about late November, early December time. It's been an incredible journey, and I didn't think I'd be here in July to sit here and tell you about who we've got coming up next, Claire Fleming, on this episode. An amazing woman. What a privilege to be able to sit here and interview her. I never thought I would have been at this point within my podcast and career to be able to get to this moment. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who has joined us along the way to keep this going for how long we've been going. This is not the end. We will be back. Date wise, just keep a lookout on our Instagram and on our website on airwildhunter.com for more details. But we will be back. So yeah, enough of me rambling. Have a wee sponsor and then straight into the episode.
A few decades ago, private citizens used to be largely that, private. What's changed? The internet. Think about everything you've browsed, searched for, watched or tweeted. Now imagine all of that data being crawled, collected and aggregated into third parties into a permanent public record. Your record. Having your private life exposed for others to see was something only celebrities worried about. But in an era where everything is online, everyone is a public figure. To keep my data private whenever I go online, I turn to ExpressVPN. One of the points is that your IP address. Data harvesters use your IP address to uniquely identify you and your location. But with ExpressVPN, my connection gets rerouted through an encrypted server with my IP address masked. Every time I turn ExpressVPN on, I'm given a random IP address shared by other ExpressVPN customers. That makes it more difficult for third parties to identify me and harvest my data. And the best part is how easy ExpressVPN is to use. No matter what device you're on, phone, laptop or smart TV, all you have to do is tap one button to get protected. So, if, like me, you believe that your data is your business, screw yourself with the number one rated VPN on the market. Visit expressvpn.com/OnAirWithThisHunter. That's expressvpn.com/OnAirWithThisHunter and get 3 extra months free when you sign up. Welcome back to On Air with Lewis Hunter, where we go into the lives of celebs, professionals and behind the scenes workers in your favourite TV and film. Join me as we go into their lives and find out what it's like to be with one of them. Today we're joined by Claire Fleming. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Thank you for coming on. So for people who don't know who you are or what you do, could you explain to them exactly what that is?
Sure. So I'm an art director, mostly on major motion pictures. I've been in the film industry for almost 20 years now. I'm originally from Glasgow, and I did do some Scottish television and low budget films at the very start of my career. And then I moved to London about 15 years ago. And since then, I've kind of just been on the major motion pictures based in London and around the world.
Okay, sounds very interesting. Sounds good. So did you always sort of want to go down the route of art directing? Like, was that always something that you envisioned doing?
I did, yeah. I think there was a few key films I saw when I was younger. And at that time, I didn't know how you made movies or what went into it. But I always was very interested in film. And then as I got older into my teenage years, when I was 14, I saw Romeo and Juliet, the Baz Luhrmann film. And it sort of hit me in the face with like design and music and color. And then I was like, oh, I'd love to work on the design of movies. But at that time, there wasn't any sort of film design courses or anything that I knew of. Yeah. So as a sort of backup, I went and studied interior architecture and then sort of moved into architecture. And luckily enough, the architect's practice that I was working for in Glasgow, his daughter was an art director in London and was moving back to Scotland and needed help on some projects, and I sort of sidestepped and started working for her.
So that's how you got in. What sort of influenced you then? Like, what made you think that is what I want to do?
And that's quite tricky because it's probably a combination of things, but I think it was actually seeing certain films. Yeah. I just knew I kind of wanted to be in film industry, not necessarily art department. When I was younger, the typical Star Wars. I loved Star Wars as a kid. I have older siblings, so I would always watch what they were watching.
Yeah.
Jurassic Park. I remember seeing that in the cinema, and Indiana Jones, and just being like, whoa. And then seeing like a few names. It was always George Lucas or Steven Spielberg at the end of these films, and I was like, who are these people? This is amazing. And that kind of got me hooked into film as a youngster. And then it was as a teenager, sort of realizing a difference between sort of costume and then design and set and production and lighting, and realizing there was different departments that do different things. And that kind of got my interest into film and
Okay.
art directing.
So we're talking about you know, being an art director and doing art directing, but what type of that art directing is it that you do within these movies? Is it post? Is it pre? What exactly is it?
So we tend to start very early in pre-production. A designer will be hired by the director of a movie, sometimes up to a year before, on the bigger things. And then they'll start designing things, and maybe about anything between 8 to 4 months before production starts, they'll start hiring art directors. And what I do, there's different kinds of art directors, but mostly will work with a designer and then start drawing up the sets. So do technical drawings so that construction can then build the sets. And we might do some sort of concept work and 3D modeling. I do a lot of visual effects art directing as well, which means not only will I do the technical drawings for the build, but I will take that further and do the set extensions and anything that's required for post-production. We'll try and do that within the pre-production and filming stages so that a designer has control of the look of the film, and it's all handed over before post-production begins.
Okay, yeah. So like you sort of imagine what almost like the set would look like in a sense and how it's going to play out.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
And we'll do that with different things. We'll have the director, we might put it into VR, and then we'll have color coded, what we're actually building versus what's a set extension or a location. And then they can see the spaces in VR, and the DOP will be involved and the designer, and between the sort of 4 of us, we can kind of then figure out exactly what is required. Oh, and also the visual effects supervisor, because I might do a set extension, but if it's a director that knows their shots, we might actually be able to capture everything in camera for real. So early on, we'll start breaking it down and seeing what is actually going to be required and what won't be required.
So I was assuming then you would do a lot of sort of your designing for that in an Unreal Engine, yeah?
Yeah, I have done, depending on the movie. There's been different films, we've used different things. I use Maya for all my modeling, and then I'll use Vectorworks for my 2D, and then I'll use Unreal or Twinmotion to do the VR scouting.
Yeah. So you're the art director in the new Star Wars show Andor, which is streaming on Disney Plus August 31st. What is it like working with multiple directors throughout that?
Well, I have to say that was probably a special one because it was filmed during COVID. Okay. So it was very unique, and it was at the start of COVID as well. So we had very strict protocols. So actually, one-on-one with directors didn't really happen. I think our first director was actually doing a few with different blocks. But the designer spoke to them all, and we had a showrunner. And then it kind of filtered down. And that was more because of COVID. I think had COVID not been there, it would have been different. So it's not the best example of working with lots of directors because we were all kept away from each other.
Yeah, but would like their sort of visions and ideas change from director to director? Did they all sort of have the same idea when it came to the show?
I mean, there was a showrunner who had a kind of very clear idea of the look, and the designer, obviously. And then I think it was more, there was so many sets on that show. I think every episode's probably different. It feels like quite a long time ago, so it's quite hard to remember. But I think obviously different people had different ideas of how they wanted to shoot sets as well, if we did go back. But it all came through the designer on this one just because of COVID.
Yeah.
So it was a different train this time.
Does like the process of like a TV show, filming a TV show, doing a TV show, does it change or vary compared to like a blockbuster or a movie?
Oh yeah, you've got slightly less time, and everything sort of turns over quicker. Um, it was very tough going actually. I think the sort of these big TV shows, and I mean that like sort of HBO or Disney Plus and Marvel ones, Netflix, these sort of this high end TV. They have a lot of money, a lot of episodes, but we just seem to have slightly less time than what you would have for a movie. So that's kind of the main difference I noticed.
And was there like a big difference, obviously, with Star Wars bringing in that, you know, panorama screen with the LED? Did that make a big difference in sort of designing the sets?
Um, well, we didn't. I mean, are you talking about the Mandalorian?
Well, with the Mandalorian, Boba Fett, and then I think Obi-Wan has it now. That came out.
Yeah, they're both filmed in the States.
Okay.
And we call them a volume. Those LED volume when they're like horseshoed in.
Yeah.
They're specifically designed to have more visual effects than set. On Andor, we only used the screens as a backdrop out of windows of sets, so it was a completely different setup, and not the way that they would use it. So essentially, instead of having a blue screen outside windows, we had the live screen outside windows on sets.
Okay. So it sort of like helped the actors visualize the set more.
Yeah, and it's just you really do feel like you're in a city in another world instead of looking out at blue. We've used volume sets on different shows and stuff, but not on Andor. But like Mandalorian, I think it worked really well for them because they had a lot of reflections on his helmet, and that helped a lot.
Yeah.
So I think they're useful for different shows for different reasons.
Yeah, 100%. So would you then work with the actors and the directors at first hand? I know, as you said, Andor wasn't a good example, but with, say, The Force Awakens, would you have been there on set with those actors and directors, and how's that like? Like, how does that work?
Sure. Again, it depends. Different directors work differently. There's always a production designer above the art director, and they have the most contact with the directors. On the big stuff like Star Wars Episode 7 and 9, and on 9 particularly, I was kind of looking after a big location in Jordan. So I was in a lot of meetings with JJ and our production designer Kevin, and just very involved in those meetings before we even got there, and then scouting just as small groups there. So on shows like that, yes, very involved with the director and the designer, but not so much the cast. I'm trying to think of a show where probably the one that had most interaction with cast would be on Ready Player One, because we filmed a lot of that in motion capture.
Yeah.
So it's a different kind of interaction with the set, because essentially the sets aren't there and they're wanting to look at it on the screen, and we're giving them proxy models as sets. So that one more cast, and then other ones more director.
And I actually wanted to bring up the whole mocap with Ready Player One, because obviously most of it was mocap from the movie, as it was all set within like a virtual reality world. Is there a big difference between working on mocap, like Ready Player One, sorry, compared to something like Mrs. Peregrine's or from Peculiar Children?
Oh yeah, completely. With the motion capture stage, I was motion capture art director, visual effects art director, and on that instance, instead of sitting in the office, my desk was on the sound stage. So I was there when they were filming, all through filming, live and ready. Whereas on like say Miss Peregrine's, I'd be office based and building the sets and doing it that way, and then not on set 9 to 5, So that's the difference with motion capture. I needed to be right there all the time.
Firsthand, yeah.
Yeah.
And was there a big difference between working with J.J. Abrams on Star Wars and Steven Spielberg with Ready Player One? Like, what would be the differences between working with these different directors?
Well, actually, I like working with both of them very much. And I think Steven's just an amazing person to watch. Such a hard worker in at 7, and shoots till 6, and knows exactly what he wants and exactly the shots he needs, and is just very good with everybody, and just consummate professional with massive back catalogue and years of experience. And I think I very much enjoyed watching and kind of learning from him, and then having worked with JJ a few times, seeing he came up through Spielberg, so was kind of taught by him himself. So you can kind of tell,
like a mini Spielberg.
yeah,
Yeah.
with his, that it just is a very interesting thing to see. And I think JJ is really great because he allows people to talk and have an opinion and give ideas. We might not always be right or have good ideas, but at least you're allowed to kind of speak.
And sort of give an opinion.
Yeah. It's a really nice collaboration, and I think that comes from Steven probably.
So do you prefer working in sort of the sci-fi genre with Star Wars and Ready Player One compared to something like, say, a thriller? They're obviously very different.
Yeah. I think I just like working with good people, to be honest. Now I'm at that kind of point in my career. I think just this current trend on major motion pictures is kind of sci-fi or sequels, prequels, remakes, reboots, which is a little bit boring. I like doing sort of original things, and there is original things out there, but the majority of the big stuff, there's Episode 9 or Jurassic World 9. So it's just kind of fallen like that for the last few years. I just finished on Friday a sort of period film, which was a refreshing change to sci-fi. So I like changing it up, but there's a definite sort of sci-fi superhero vibe going on at the moment.
Definitely taking over the movies entirely at the minute.
Yeah.
Just everyone sort of, I guess, likes the ones from the 90s, the 80s, and they just want to reproduce that. So, but it seems to be working. So it's obviously doing it right.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. I'll go see it this week, but I know that Top Gun's. Oh no, it's not sci-fi, but I mean, I've heard it's really good, and I'm quite looking forward to seeing it.
So you've produced, directed, and wrote a few shorts. Do you prefer doing that, or do you prefer, being the director, the art department director? Is that where you want your career to go towards, or do you want to continue to be the art director?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to direct. I love doing it. In particular, animations. With the skills I've learned from art directing and visual effects, I've been able to sort of pick up how to animate, which is loads of fun. And I love having my own sort of creative control. That is, I suppose, the ultimate goal. I know it's difficult to get into, and art department pays well and pays the bills, and I end up sort of slipping back in to working with people I like and helping out on jobs. But eventually, yes, I would like to be a director.
Sorry, is there anything you would like to promote or talk about before we wrap it up?
I can do. I think I did a couple animations during lockdown. One of which was a series of poems that were written by prisoners. And then I managed to get Letitia Wright, Deborah O'Doyle, Jodie Turner-Smith, Michael Kenneth Williams, who sadly passed last year, and Riz Ahmed all read them. And then I animated to their voices, to these poems. And it's been very successful and well received. And I think both the combination of their voices and the subject of the poems worked really well, and it's just sort of finishing its festival circuit, so I will eventually sort of just put it online. And then another one I just finished, a little animation called The Tenement, which is a little homage to Scotland, because I don't get home very often living in London. And again, got some well-known Scottish voices to lend themselves to it, and that was a lot of fun doing that. They're both very different styles, but stuff I very much enjoy doing.
They have meaning behind them, yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, you're welcome. You're very welcome.